The Resident Evil 3 Remake's intro is honestly an explosive rush. Things are certainly not okay, and there's a storm raging outside. However, this first world we take part in is nothing more than a dream world. A nightmare that Jill awakes from as she sees the infection spreading through her in the mirror. She wakes up, goes to the restroom, and then the phone rings. And with that phone call, things absolutely explode. Literally. At this point, we run for our life through a destroyed apartment building and scramble until we find ourselves on the city streets. But what if we take the entire sequence of events and change it? What if we put Carlos in Jill's shoes? How would the intro play out with someone else at the wheel? Well, let's find out. If you're new here to HorrorScoped, subscribe now for game-breaking videos on your favorite horror games. And be sure to check out our videos on the other Resident Evil games. So, Carlos. Immediately upon waking up, we can tell we are Carlos simply by the headset piece on the left side of the screen. Normally, the third-person view isn't restored until after the second bathroom scene, so we won't fully see our character until then. However, there's a couple neat things to cover. The opening animation is a bit glitched since Carlos has a bigger model than Jill, and his body armor doesn't know how to behave during the animations. Once we are on our feet though, things are a bit more smooth. If we head into the bathroom, we'll encounter Jill still in the mirror, at least during this part. This is because the developers rigged up a separate Jill in the reflection that mirrors our movements. This changes once the plot advances. This is something I'll go over a bit more in our next video, but for now, let's press on. As the cutscene plays out, Carlos's hands condense slightly as if they're being corrupted despite our reflection not matching up. We wake up in the bed just like Jill does, and we head into the bathroom again. Jill is still in the mirror until we toggle on the light switch, and after that point, Carlos is finally visible. He even appears in the mirror. I started checking out the surrounding areas a bit as the phone rings, and despite Carlos not talking, the subtitles still come up for Jill's responses. But once we pick up that phone, everything changes. Okay, so this is sort of where the timeline splits, because the game can progress in one of two ways. The first way is the unfortunate way. Carlos goes to pick up the phone, and Jill materializes out of his body. I laughed really hard the first time this happened, because it's like Carlos was just frozen in time. The cutscene still plays out as normal too. Jill's getting thrashed in the foreground, while Carlos is just chilling like a boss in the background. What's interesting is that once Jill shuts the door, the camera pans back over to Carlos, but the dude is just lost in thought, staring at the phone, not knowing what to do. The game is soft locked at this point, and Carlos will just sit here for all of eternity. So that's the first thing that could happen. The better example is when Carlos survives this ordeal and actually takes part in the cutscene, because one of his eyeballs gets lodged outside of his head, and his face and hair get all scrunched. It's terrifying. He gets kicked around just like Jill does, but his body looks like it is dead due to his eyes being gone. After running away from Nemesis, he morphs back into his original form in the hallway. At this point, I decide to draw a weapon because we don't normally have them here, but Carlos is a boss, so we pull out our pistol. Nemesis is nowhere to be found though, even if we walk back into the room and check out the area he broke in from. It's empty. Carlos's wrist has seen better days though, and it glitches out. As we progress, Carlos takes over Jill's actions in each cutscene, which is pretty funny. However, I ran into an issue when trying to leave the apartment building. Carlos just went half T-pose and was sitting there floating as everything transpired around him. His face was still moving, and I could technically fire my weapon, but it was hella weird and funny. Unfortunately, the game was soft locked, so I had to start over. This time when booting it up, I wanted to try something though. I wanted to see what first-person Carlos looked like in third person, to see if I could mess up the events of the bathroom scene. But what I ended up stumbling upon was a headless Carlos. This is something that a lot of games do when the character is capable of seeing their body in first person, but it just looked super strange. Heading out of bounds, I ran to Jill's mirror clown. That's something I'll cover more in the next video, but long story short, while out here, I accidentally warped to the end of the Nemesis chase scene and the game totally broke. The main reason is that I accessed the final hallway while facing the wrong direction, so my character was trying to stumble run and got forced into going the wrong way. The game only allows you to move forward, and because Carlos lacks this animation set, he keeps trying to half T-pose during the run, which makes him stop moving. And I was stuck doing this forever. But I learned from my mistakes. I knew what issues I had to avoid to progress going forward. But in order to get a new flavorful experience, I decided to change things up a bit. So I put Mikhail in the hot seat this time. He starts off looking pretty good, but things take a turn for the worse. Either Mikhail just found out he won $1 million, or his soul was just reaped from his body, because his eyes are popping out like a cartoon character who just smashed his hand with a hammer. It's twice as gross because he sticks his hand in his wound while he's running. And then he reclaims his composure in the hallway as usual. Well, until Nemesis throws a concrete slab like it's a frisbee, and things carry on like usual. Mikhail gets stuck with the slow-mo, and then crawls on the ground to safety just like Jill would. Except for those beady eyes, of course. I guess it's to be expected with a tentacle closing in on you. After we tumble around for a bit, probably my favorite part of this whole ordeal is that Mikhail just straight up tanks Nemesis' hit somehow when he's rushing at him with a concrete slab. He blocks the shot and then flexes on Nemesis with a half T-pose to show him who is truly the boss here. Honestly, this was pretty neat, because it changed the duration of this hallway scene and actually made Nemesis turn sideways to try to hit Mikhail. At the end of the hallway, Nemesis just froze and didn't do anything. But as I walked through the door, the room exploded and launched me into the city streets as usual. I was hoping I was going to be able to test out weapons here, but regardless of what I did, I wasn't able to shoot. Resident Evil 3 does this thing where certain maps are locked down at times and prevent you from firing. This sometimes happens with individual characters too. The only thing you can do to lift the curse is to pop out of bounds for a second and shoot from the sidelines. But even then, this typically unloads enemies. For my last trick on this run, I wanted to see if I could eliminate all the zombies that come after Jill and Brad at the end of the street. However, even if we get behind the fence and try to eliminate them, only 1 or 2 can be defeated. The rest are invincible. And if we try to do this after the cutscene, the zombies that enter the area can't be shot due to the lockdown of the map. It's the end of the run for us. So we move our bug-eyed character through the gate and proceed to the next area. And that's what happens if you start the game with a different character. It's quite bizarre, but I hope you enjoyed all the weirdness it contained. And with that, thanks for watching, guys and gals, and we'll see you all again really soon on HorrorScoped. Cheers!